Okay, starting.
Every week we open wide the virtual stage where ideas spark and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine, your message taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine, your message taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we grow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show.
Hello. Can I ask you one thing? You are running a regular webinar to bring in leads, aren't you? No. I'm gonna hazard a guess that most of you aren't. And most of you don't because it's too much effort. It's too hard. Nobody will turn up. I'm sure if we pulled up ChatGPT, I could give you 100 reasons. In fact, I might even do that in a second. Let's have a look if I can find a ChatGPT to confess your sins. Why not? So if I bring that into my little share box, I will say, why don't people start their own webinars? Now, one thing I really like about ChatGPT the most is it ignores spelling mistakes because it really doesn't understand words properly. And unbelievably, it agrees with me. Fear of looking silly. What if nobody shows up? Isn't that what I just said? It was probably listening. What if I mess up? What if somebody asks a question and I can't answer it? That's a clever one. Why do people start it? They overestimate the complexity. Well, let's be fair. It is quite complex setting up a webinar, but probably not as scary and complex as you think. They think they need a big audience first. Ooh. Topic paralysis. No immediate payoff. Ooh. Let me drag something else onto my screen. I would like to show you that it's really quite easy to start a webinar series and why you want to do a webinar series, not a webinar on its own. That is the total content for this webinar. I have about 8 bullet points that I'm working from, but how to start this was the tricky bit. And then I thought, why not use, no, not ChatGPT this time, but I was tempted. I thought, why not let the great LinkedIn give me a sample person that we can work on, so I don't look like I'm cheating. Now, I did have the idea that I would just go into LinkedIn and not live, but of course, I don't know what I'm going to get. It could be a random stuff and it could be totally irrelevant. So I did it about half an hour ago and I screenshotted. I've edited out the person because I don't want to bias them in any way, but I've taken a screenshot and here it is of a post that was out there. And I thought this was quite a good post for, if I make it a little bit bigger. So this post is from somebody who helps keynote speakers. That's what it says there. Helps keynote speakers. And his post says, a speaker had 500 ideal customers in the room, did no planning or preparation to build a strategic approach to the event other than doing the keynote. To their credit, the person got 8 leads, and I suspect with more preparation ever to proper structure around this event, they should have had at least 3 or 4 times the amount, maybe more. Do you know what my first reaction to that post is? How did they get 500 ideal customers in the room? I'm not knocking them. I'm just suggesting that if you thought that you could get 500 ideal customers in the room from organizing a webinar, I have a feeling you'd be pretty more keen to run a webinar than you are feeling now. And you wouldn't have been on that list of ChatGPT's reasons why you don't want to run a webinar now, because you're more likely to think nobody's going to turn up and I'm not going to know what to say. So this would be a fantastic thing to get. But most of you are not going to expect to get this. So how do we deal with this problem? Let's, if I can double click in the right place, let's take that and drag it out of the way. Most of you are going to have the problem where you just don't think anyone's going to turn up. Or, and this is what can distract people, this is a red flag. When you get all your friends to turn up, because your friends are going to say what you want them to, they're going to be very nice, but your friends aren't your customers. And if you don't have customers in the room, how are you going to sell anything? So this is the very simple theory that I have for you. You obviously want to run a webinar and be successful. Let's take that for granted. But you're worried that if you run a webinar, nobody turns up. We can take that for granted too. Maybe there won't be anybody turning up. So I got a really silly idea. Instead of setting yourself up to run one webinar, which you don't believe anyone's going to turn up to, and you're not going to get any sales from, and at the end of it, you'll be feeling yourself vindicated that you shouldn't have run it in the first place. Why don't we turn it upside down? And we commit to running one webinar a month for the next year. We're going to run the same-ish webinar every month for a year. And at the end of the year, we'll decide whether it was a good or a bad idea. Does this sound like a big commitment? It is a big commitment, but it's not a big a commitment as you might think it to be. Because if you prepare all the things you need to prepare to run a webinar and run it once, then all that effort is just for one webinar. But if we go to all that effort of running the webinar and then repeat it every month for a year, then all that effort is just not one webinar, but a dozen. And I haven't got enough fingers to show you. A dozen webinars. Now that effort is being put into a dozen webinars. That means that effort is distributed around a dozen webinars. You have the chance to invite the lead of your dreams a dozen times. You've got a chance to build up your people a dozen times. You've got a chance to practice that speech and presentation and tweak little bits until it's as perfect as you could ever have it a dozen times. One webinar is a lot of effort. One webinar done a dozen times is easier. I can tell you how much easier it is, considering Mike and I are running the same webinar, although we are changing the content, but we're still running the same webinar system 3 times a week, every week. And the amount of effort we have to go to is minutes for each webinar because we've got the structure of the webinar set up. And in fact, in tomorrow's show, I'm actually going to show everybody how we build that reinventing system. But today, it's all about the theory. Because if you don't have a plan and a theory, then there's no webinar to create. So if we think of that speaker, trainer, I assume it's a speaker trainer, who's helping people write keynote speeches. What do you need to run a webinar? You need the technology, and then you need to put something in it. So let's start with the scary bit. Is the technology scary? Well, I can tell you it's not scary, but I would, wouldn't I? Maybe I should bring my colleague in chaos to come onto the stage and tell me if he thinks that running repeatable webinars is a hard job or not. So Mike Latter, as they always say, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everybody. So what are we up to this week, John?
Is it easy or easier to create one webinar which you repeat on a regular basis to just doing and putting all your eggs? Oh, that's preempting your answer, isn't it? Putting the whole thing into one webinar, and you just do all big effort to do one webinar, and that's all you do in the year.
Well, it depends on the content material. That's going to be always first and foremost, because if the content material is going to be changing constantly, then obviously you'll have to constantly be updating it. But let's assume that the content is fairly static, meaning that it has longevity to it. It will last.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll assume that the content will last in its longevity, and it is a service that this person that John showed us earlier that he found on LinkedIn is offering their clients. So of course, doing it well once and then repeating it 11 more times is a no-brainer. Because again, the Zoom system has the capabilities of, should you want to do that in one form or another, you don't have to actually be live every time necessarily. And I know John is going to be talking a little bit about that in a little bit, so I'm not going to give that away. So there is that concept of it. But should you feel, or should you want to do it live every time, the capabilities are there. And of course, I don't want to give away what John is going to talk about tomorrow. But again, there are ways that you can actually have the same webinar scheduled once a month with the same technical setup, with the same information that you're going to use. Should it be shares, not shares? All that capabilities can be done well ahead of time. But again, as John said, if you've got everything down pat, you know your topic, you know what you're going to be talking about, you have confidence in how you're going to speak, this should be done within minutes of being able to do any type of webinar, any type of topic that you may want to convey to your client, to your customer. Insert here.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right there. There's two types of webinars. You can, if you're going to do a regular webinar series, then there's two types of webinars you can do. You can either, as Mike said, you can either do all the content and keep repeating that, or you can have a theme and then you can swap out bits of the content. And then, although it's the same webinar, you are changing the content. I think what we're going to talk about today is where 99% of the content is going to stay the same for each iteration of your webinar. So you just concentrate on creating the content for that one webinar and then rolling it out a dozen times, rather than just putting all your eggs in one basket, running it once, and then if nobody turns up, you've got no future for that webinar.
Oh, John looks like he's busy doing something, so I'll show everybody what he's doing. Are you ready for it, John?
I think so. Let's so I've taken a screenshot of the speech or the speaker's notes from LinkedIn, and I've just thrown it into ChatGPT. Now, I don't have any problem. In fact, a great person once told me that you should fish where there are fishermen. And what he meant by that is it's no good coming up with some wacky idea that no one's ever thought of, because there'll be nobody interested in buying it because nobody's ever thought of it before. And you'll then have to start at the very bottom of the ladder of persuading people. In other words, you'll have to persuade them there's a problem that they never even knew they had. Whereas if you fish where fishermen are, then obviously there's fish. And there are fish there because there is a need that people know about. They know there's a need. They know they need a solution. And people have already proven that they can sell into that group of fish the answer to the problem. And therefore, you have a market that's established, that has rules, that has conditions, that has prices. It has everything about it. And you can just join the ocean because the world is too big. There's always enough fish if you find a good category to fish in. So what I've done here is very simple. I've given that I've just said to it, as you can see, we want to write a simple webinar for the person who posted this. And ChatGPT is now going to come up with some concepts. If you can't add any value to what ChatGPT puts in the box, then you shouldn't be selling the stuff that you think you should be selling. You must have an angle. You've got to be there has to be something different about your boat when you go out fishing. I don't know how long this analogy is going to work for, but we're going to give it a go. You do need to have something different about your boat to everybody else's boat to differentiate you, but you are still fishing for the same fish. So with that said, let's see what it comes up with. Stop leaving money on the floor of the conference floor, keynote to clients, event strategy. Yeah, so this is good. So the immediate thing I have whenever I do a webinar is I want to know the beginning and the end. I can't write the middle unless I know the beginning and the end. The beginning is, where do we start from? Well, in this case, according to that post, and we're now writing a webinar on it, we're starting with the idea that people, and I know you wouldn't all be able to do this, but let's just say that this person thinks that they can find people who have a list of people they can sell to, but are not very good at writing the script to sell during the webinar. So the beginning is the problem. And the problem is you can't get conversions. And the solution is, here's a way to get more conversions. I mean, it's as simple as that. So that's the beginning and that's the end. And therefore, he's come up with 3 good titles. Stop leaving money on the conference floor, from keynote to clients. That show up and hope. Oh, I like that. The show up and hope show. I like that. I might use that as a title sometime. I like that. That's good clickbait, good interest generations. So what's the promise? You leave with a 1-page event strategy. So that's the solution. Of course, the question is, do you want to give that much information in this webinar? So what's the objective of the webinar? We're going to get people from thinking they can't have a strategy after they've got all these people in the room, they haven't got a strategy to convert them. And the end point is, we're going to give a strategy to convert them. But what are you going to give within that? Are you going to give, as suggested here, a 1-page overview? Does that mean you've given away all your secrets? Do you want to deliver to them a actual training session, which you want to charge them for? So maybe for this webinar, your before and after is you need a system, and then you say, we've got a system, and then you show what the system can do results-wise. You don't show them the detail. You've got to decide whether you're teaching or selling. And most of the time, I do a lot of webinars where I do a lot of teaching. And really, I have a little bit of my brain up there, I think it is, somewhere about there, that keeps shouting, what are you selling? What are you selling? When are they going to buy? What are you selling? And this is important because we've got to make money somehow. You can't give away all your secrets for free. You've got to decide what you give away for free and what you sell. So we've got a promise from ChatGPT suggesting a one-page event strategy. Now, if you've got 500 people who turn up to an event easily, you might want to charge them so only 250 turn up. Or it might be that you just think that your close at the end is going to get the people. But one way or the other, you need to have a beginning and an end, a problem and a solution. And the solution doesn't need to be fix all their problems. The solution needs to be what happens next. And in this case, it's suggesting that the call to action could be a strategy call. So a 15 to 30 minute strategy call with the people who think that what you've talked about in the webinar is compelling enough that they then want to have a call with you so that they can get better conversions in their webinar. So that's it. And what ChatGPT is suggesting is you talk about the math. And for this particular scenario, that might be a really good idea. If you show people how much more money they can make if they just convert 20% more people in the room, that will be quite a compelling argument. Although I like to think, if you've got 500 people in the room and you only got 2 or 3 converted, you've probably done that math in your head already. What it would be so much better if I got more people converted. So, ChatGPT is doing a pretty good job so far. Pre-event positioning. Who is this for? What will you get? Remember, you want to get real customers in the room, not just your friends and family, although it is cool to have your mum on a call. You need the one reason that they are going to have to turn up, and that's what you need to promote. And then we can go on to do the conversions. So this is almost a webinar within a webinar. Let's be conscious, though, of what the content of what they're doing here is important. But the webinar outside this is what you're going to do. So you could do this to ChatGPT yourself. And it depends how much and how well ChatGPT knows your market for how good an answer you get out of this. You could provide a good overview, 500 words of what you do, what the problem is the customer has, what you then provide, and what the result of what you provide is for them, where they get, which would then give ChatGPT a chance to better analyze what you do and not give you a generic answer. But it is quite good at doing this. And as I said, if it doesn't come up with a good answer, it probably means that ChatGPT is not available, is not aware, the data is not available about your marketplace. And I humbly suggest that if in that sort of market where there are few people, you need to find other people who are successful in your marketplace and tag on to what they are doing. You want to fish where there are fishermen. And usefully, if it hadn't, I would have asked for it. I've got a one-page run of show. So you can work through that. And again, you need to see that this makes sense for you, even though it's mostly going to be made of a generic situation. And then you need to go into it and add your special sauce, what it is that makes you better. Maybe you can make a small change in every section. Maybe you can't, but if you can, that is a cool thing to do. So I've got quite a few sections here. So I've got the open story. Can you make that more personal to you? Why great skills underperform? Again, do you have an example of you or a customer? Can you got something to personalize that and make it more specific? Have you got something for the ROI question? Talking about the event, have you got something about that that's personal to you? Because tying it into you is making it personal and making it more interesting. And although you start with a generic framework, you want to make it personal. And this sounds like a lot of work, but that's my point. It is a lot of work. I'm not denying that writing a webinar from scratch is a lot of work. What I'm trying to change your mind about is that running a webinar with all this work and then doing it once and just betting that the time, the date, the invites, and everything else is so perfect that people turn up is just too scary a thing to go for. If we work on this webinar and we run it, do you know what happens if nobody turns up? It's called a practice. Have you heard of them? If nobody turns up, it's a practice. And now you have confidence to do it again. If 5,000 people turn up, that might not be a success. That might be overload. Let's be honest. You're more likely to get perhaps half a dozen people turn up. I have a look at my YouTube. I might just get a few people turn up to my webinar. Well, that's great, because if you've got 4 or 5 people who turn up, you've got the resources to follow up everybody, those 4 or 5, after the event quickly, because there's only 4 or 5 of them. Have a chat with them all and ask them about the event. If you don't have the courage to do that, there's a little trick I know. Get somebody you trust, give them a set of questions and get them to follow up, and they can ring up and say they're the assistant, the manager, something like that. Just getting some feedback from my colleague about his presentation. To be honest, sometimes that's actually good. I've been known to ring up people and ask them about my webinar and pretend I wasn't me. I just talked in a lower voice and got away with it. So that way, I could get some feedback from the real people of exactly what they thought about my webinar. So my next version will be better. I can find out what I said that they did and didn't like, and I can then tweak it. Because setting up a webinar is a lot of effort. But if we set up the webinar and then we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again, it's less effort each time. And that's not even before we start taking some of the content that we create in our webinars and record it, and then put it in as recordings, pre-recordings in future versions. Before we even do that, just running through the same webinar and improving it, getting tweaks, getting your spreadsheet of comments and checking through the feedback and what people liked and didn't like and making the tweaks. That is really powerful. And it's a real good learning experience as well. Running webinars in Zoom is easy. And the reason I say running webinars, because I know you all want to do meetings. I know, because that's what most people do. They do a meeting with 3 or 4 people in it, but it's not the same experience. I know you want to see the faces of people, see if they're smiling or if they're frowning. I mean, out the corner of my eye, even though he's not on stage, I'm keeping an eye on Mike. If Mike starts crying or starts pulling his hair out or having a heart attack, then there might be something I did about my content that was right or wrong. Or it may be that he's telling me that I've been talking for the last 10 minutes without my microphone on. So it's always good to have feedback, yes, but people smiling, nodding, going to sleep, getting up and leaving the stage and going off to watch TV while they're supposed to be watching you, people turning their camera off because they're bored, is not great feedback. You need activity feedback. If you want to know what your audience is doing, then you should have asked them a question or run a poll for them. You should have done something that made them interact. Even if it's just teaching people the power of the emotion and using the emojis, which we've talked about on previous webinars. Just building up that interaction. Because if you don't start building some positive interaction, whatever you try and do at the end of the webinar to build a process, to take their money, it's not going to happen if you haven't built up that interactive muscle working in the webinar. Otherwise, they're just sitting back and not even paying attention after a while because you're not getting them to do anything. They lose interest. And they'll be watching the TV and checking their phone and, oh yeah, I'm on a thing with, yeah, he's very good. Well, if he's very good, why aren't you watching him on your phone? Or why aren't you watching him on the webinar? Why are you watching your phone? You need to build the interaction. So what ChatGPT hasn't done on this schedule of things is what I would do is I would go back to my list of ideas from ChatGPT, cut and paste it into, I usually cut and paste it into PowerPoint, to be honest, because I like to build things around PowerPoint slides. And then I would look at each one, and we've already added one thing. So we've already added our special sauce or our phrasing or our angle, the little thing that makes us different. The next thing I'll be now adding in would be, what question? Can I run a poll? Want to put something in chat? Is there something that I can pull out back from them as a confirmation of what I'm going to say? Is there some question which I can ask them, which will help me define more of what their specific issue is? Is it a confirmation question? In other words, a question where you know the answer, or you hope you think you know what the answer is going to be, and you just want them to put in the same answer so you get confirmation of what you're doing. Can be quite surprised when people give the different answer to what you're expecting. But again, that's all about learning. That's why you keep doing the same webinar over and over again. So what little piece of information can you put in these? And of course, the other thing is death by PowerPoint. So many people like to have slides as something to rely on. And okay, that's fine. If you want some slides of things to rely on, then you can have that. That's not a problem. As long as you don't become a talking head with a slideshow and everybody's looking at the slideshow and you then as a talking head just disappear. Because if you just disappear, then what was the point of you being there? They might as well just be watching a video on YouTube. Because if you're not there, then why should they be there? So you could have a slide for each section, a bit Apple-like, when they put this. So you don't put the words, you don't put the actual text, you put images that support what you want to do. And I'm just looking for something which I pulled up. I even got ChatGPT to do this. Here it is. Let's let's run this slide. So there was my little outline of what I wanted to talk about to you today. You see, it's in a slide. And the only thing I could find that was cool was this little idea here. So if we're talking about the webinars, this is a nice little image. I think it probably needs a background because I think it's got a transparent background on it. But we were talking about, it's called rinse and repeat by a lot of people. In other words, you do the thing, you update it, and then you come around and do it again. So you just keep doing the same webinar, but you refine it each time you go. So in this case, ChatGPT has come up with create, tweak, promote, and deliver. So we create our webinar first of all. That's where all the effort is. And then we tweak it. Well, you don't tweak it the first time around. Well, you might tweak it, but the idea of creating it is the tweaking as well. So that, sorry, ChatGPT, you got it wrong. You've got to then promote your webinar so people turn up, and then you deliver it. Well, for me, I think they're all in the wrong order. I think it should be create, promote, deliver, tweak, because you want to tweak after you've delivered the webinar to improve. So there we are. ChatGPT didn't get it right, but it got the right idea. So that's fine. And it's a good enough example that you could create a simple diagram like this to explain to people how things work, how your process works. But at the end of the day, you are trying to find a way to get people interested. So you're getting them from where they are now to where they want to take it, where they are confident enough to take an action. So you're showing them what the solution is going to be, and you want them to take an action. And if they take an action, and I will close that, if they take an action, then that allows them to see why they want to work with you. And if you don't get that bit right, then this last bit at the end, the call to action, is going to be a flop. And that, of course, is the place where you want things to work. So your call to action at the end is the part of the process where you're going to sink or swim. But if you've done the other sections properly, you've given an added value to why you are doing it. You've given a slide to inspire them, or maybe a couple of slides to demonstrate to them that you have a system. You are going to knock little holes in their wall of success. You're going to knock little holes and knock their wall down so that they can come through to success, and they don't put their walls up to success, and they don't ever get anywhere, and nor do you. Little steps to take your call to action. There we are, little steps. That would probably work on this guy's thing. So this speaker thing, you probably want to give reasons why people, you have 500 people, so why do they not buy at the end? What are the reasons that they don't buy? And then you want to knock over those reasons, knock out those bricks to make a path to success, why they don't buy. And the best way to show why people don't buy is to give them examples of people who do. And then they see what they could do to get the right answer. But this is a lot of effort. What happens when you repeat a webinar? Well, if you have, as we will show tomorrow, Zoom system is really easy for doing this. But if you don't have Zoom system, or you want to do it another way, however you do it, you're going to need a database of people to invite to the webinar. Now, you may get that database of people because you have a database. You may get that database of people because you're going to do some marketing to create a list of people to come to the webinar. You may use LinkedIn. You may use social media. But you see, I don't see LinkedIn as social media because it's a different way of talking to people. That's why I prefer LinkedIn. But there are other social media, and again, it depends. Just like I said, fish where fishermen are, you need to use social media that's applicable to where your customers are, your potential customers are. Being a bit optimistic on what customers are we? Your potential customers. You need to put social media messages out to where they are. And you need to talk to them about their problems and give them the indication that you have the solution. And then into Zoom webinar, you can put all the people that are invited. Or if they haven't yet signed up anywhere, they can register for your event. So the people you can invite straight out of your database, you can invite, and the people that don't can go into your database. You can take a spreadsheet and you can import it into Zoom, and Zoom will send out the invites to them. Or if they are being captured by social media, they can have a landing page provided by Zoom, and Zoom will then take their registration information and will register them for the event. So you don't need all these other funnel programs. Zoom Webinar is going to do it for you. And then you have a webinar, but you tell Zoom it's a multi-session webinar, which means that you're going to repeat it. You can set the rule for just repeating one, because you can add sessions afterwards. And the big thing Zoom's going to ask you is, do you want people to turn up to one of these webinars or all of them? Now, this is going to depend on your process and depend on what you're doing, whether you're inviting people to the webinar and you're going to sell to them, or whether you're going to be doing, and when you're doing the same thing over and over again, obviously you only want them to turn up once. There's no point in them turning up to the same webinar over and over again. If you're doing a webinar that's going to be quite changed between each session, but it's still building to the same answer, then maybe you want them to be able to turn up to one and then turn up to all of them. Zoom will do this for you. You don't get this when you do a meeting. You can load your production studio slides, what things that Mike's doing for me. We've got our intro music. You may have an intro that's different. We've got our different slides where I'm screen sharing or talking to you directly or having a word with Mike. He's able to flip around to those. We've got the same, I don't know how many it is. Mike, could you join me on stage and help me out with this? We're using Production Studio, aren't we, Mike? So Production Studio is allowing us to have our slides. We've got, how many have we got? About a dozen, 15 slides in total?
All right. If you're meaning by slides, templates, I believe that is the correct number. I can do a quick number here.
Yeah, that's okay. So we have a set of scenes, as they're called. I should use the technical term. So we have a set of scenes defined in Production Studio, and they are the different layouts for, like, we are chatting together now, and these are all available to Mike, and Mike can then rotate around to the various scenes as they are needed. And once we've created that once, there we are. There's the scene of me side by side with the data. Once we've created those once, and we've got the color scheme and everything sorted out, then all I need to do is change. Well, in this case, we have a different title for each event. You may have the same title. So for tweaking those, that's all we have to do. We just have to tweak the title. And that's all done. And it all looks very pretty. And it all looks very professional. And it's all very easy to control. And that just keeps rolling. And if I show a different slide deck, it doesn't matter, because Mike's got the deck to do the slides, and he can take charge and discuss things, and I can discuss things, and we can share slides. And that is our slide deck of scenes into which we convert all the things. And you see, did you see by magic there, we swapped over each other, because that's one of the slides that's available. So Mike, we've got layouts of people, we've got screen shares, we've got videos, and we got pictures.
And we got images. Yep.
Yeah,
that is correct.
So as long as I incorporate those and prepare them before the meeting starts, all you've really got to do is just choose when we split them over and who should be seen on the screen.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's actually a good segue to one of our images, John, that you can talk about.
Yeah, so you can put this is our call to action screen, effectively. This is where we're trying to get people like you to join our 3 main shows, because that's the way you build up your experience with us. And we have a running set of shows, but we are tweaking the content in every show. There will be common themes that will just keep coming back again and again. But at the end of the day, we are running 3 shows, and our main call to action, or our call to interaction, is to get people to turn up to these shows. So we have a image created that Mike can throw in at the irrelevant times as our call to action screen. We have a Suno generated tune at the beginning. We have a different Suno generated tune at the end. the only tweak I have to do for that is the opening tune has our opening screen image. So for each show, we have to change our opening screen image. But if you don't change your opening screen image, you wouldn't have to change that. So all that scary stuff about a production system is covered with Production Studio. And once we've built up all the scenes, it's just a case of controlling them. And it really is that easy. Again, we're just talking about Production Studio, but this is true for the email invites, the email follow-up emails, all the emails that you have to send out, which again, you might need a funnels program or a CRM if you're going to do it yourself, or you're going to do it through Zoom meetings. But Zoom Events Plus has those in it. So all the webinar things you need are already here. All the emails are here. All the registrations, if you don't have people registered, you'd have a list of them. You can do all the registrations here. All the emails are here. You've got a pretty layout to make it good. And then you've got the analytics afterwards for finding out how long people stayed and who came and all that sort of data. It's surprisingly easy to use once you've got it set up. And that means that every time we repeat this, it just gets easier and easier. Mike, have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, this was actually really interesting how you were able to take a live ChatGPT, and thank goodness ChatGPT was behaving itself. So thank you, ChatGPT, for behaving yourself. And you didn't hallucinate just when we needed you to. You didn't do it live, so that's great. And again, as you can see, ChatGPT is not perfect. John is right, where you would want to create it first, promote it, deliver it, and then what's the takeaway? What didn't work? What did work? Did they come? Did they like it? Did they not? Get a survey. Heaven forbid, at the end of the Zoom meeting, well, in this case, Zoom webinar, you could actually have the Zoom system automatically send out a survey going, did you like the presentation? Was there a topic that we talked about, an X subject that you want more information about? We could actually do a follow-up webinar about this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Feedback, 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 and more feedback. And again, feedback from me. John and I will usually have a post-show, situation where it's like, oh, John, this, oh, John, that, this is what I saw, this is what I saw, go from there. So again, there's all kinds of different capabilities, and you can always refine, but you can, if you don't do it, there's nothing to ever refine. And that's a famous line from Lord Zoom that I hear all the time.
That is, I was going to say that's a great line, but I shouldn't say that's a great line when I find out it's one of mine. But I probably remanufactured it from somebody else as well. But you're right. And the surveys, yes, that surveys, I hadn't mentioned the surveys. There is this, again, if you want a post-match survey for your webinar, there's one built into Zoom. This is why we love this platform, because it does the entire process for us. And all we have to do is just feed in a subject at the beginning and then feed out the leads at the end. It works really nicely.
And heaven forbid too, since we're using ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure ChatGPT could give a good survey questions to actually put into Zoom. And John, I don't know 100% if Zoom AI Companion does that as of yet, or does it?
It could do. It could do.
Okay.
It could certainly help. AI Companion 3.0 as we are now. Gosh, the version numbers flash past. Yeah, it could. It could.
Okay. So there you go. There's even less. So you don't even have to have a ChatGPT style account, because officially your survey questions could be done by Zoom AI Companion right now.
That's a dramatic pause for you to think. There we are. That's almost a call to action close. It really is that easy. Honestly, it really is that easy. I can't look. There's only two. And I hate it because I always like things in threes. So I'll have to think of a third one. So I'll tell you, there are three things that you really need to reprogram your brain about. The first one is, if it's a lot of effort, then why, I think this is the fourth time I've said this, why put your eggs in one basket? Because you may organize a date for a webinar and then some news item or some sports event happens and people think, oh, I can see it another time because you haven't encouraged them enough, or it's just not convenient for them. There are always reasons why even your best prospects may not find a particular date and time suitable to them. So it just seems suicide, total suicide of a marketing operation to bet that Thursday night at 7:30 or Tuesday at 10 a.m. is the date and time where you are sure that you can get everybody in and get them all to buy something. It's just not going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean you then offer them the recording, because recordings, as we know, have no impact compared to the real thing. But there's no reason why you can't repeat the offer on a regular basis. Also, that means if somebody comes to the event but isn't persuaded, but is still keen, there's always a chance they might come to a next event because they have more need. And of course, your presentation will have improved over that time. And maybe a second time you can persuade them. Secondly, it's just easier if you're repeating something, because once you've got it going, there's a whole set of things which Mike and I have to do to get this show up and running. It used to take me an hour to rebuild a new session. Now I do it in about 10 minutes. Mike, I think you have a checklist and you just seem to whiz through it.
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes at most, depending on, last minute tweaks. John, are you doing this? Are you not doing this? But yeah, 10 minutes.
Now I have to give you the third reason, which I hadn't thought of when I started this paragraph of information. But there is a third reason. And the third reason is practice makes perfect. If you're going to do something as important as a lead generation webinar, why would you not want to improve it? Which means if nobody turns up to your first one, I actually see that's a benefit. Quite often I'll run a webinar and I won't do all the full marketing for the webinar because, as you may imagine, I don't script these webinars. I just outline what I want to speak about and then speak about it. Whenever I do a new webinar of any sorts, I'm just as interested as you to play back and find out what I said. And then from that, I will quite often take the idea and able to reimagine what my advertising campaign should be for that, because now I have a better idea of the content. We've all been in the situation where you wanted to talk about ABC and you've gone onto the stage and you've started talking about it, and then you've asked a question, you've got some questions back, you've asked, or if it's in a hall, you've looked at the audience and their reactions, and you suddenly realize that they're not interested in B. They'd be better off to know about D. So I'm going to do an ACD presentation, not an ABC presentation. Delivering your content, even if it's to just friends and family or nobody at all, or no leads of any value, just doing it is a start. And just doing it gives you a chance to look at what you did and make the tweaks to make it better. You're going to have to count for me, Mike. How many times would I watch a speech to understand everything about it? Well, the first time I would listen to it without seeing the video. So that's one.
Yeah. One, yeah.
Next thing I would do is I would watch my hand gestures and how I moved around the stage, usually double speed, because then it accentuates the way you move, but with no audio on. That's number two.
Two.
Number three, I would listen to the words, or maybe look at the transcript, and I would look at the style of the words. Am I using long words? Am I using short words? Are my vocabulary applicable to the audience? And that's version 3. I'm not going to give you any more. There's a couple more ways I've listened to it, but those are the 3 main ones. And that's not listening to the whole thing done properly. So I would listen to the words, I'd listen to the action, and then I'd look at the style of the words I'm using. Are they big words or are they little words? The other thing you should look at are the words, which I should have said, and I'm sorry for missing it out. You need to look at the types of words. So are they in words in your marketplace? And if so, will your audience understand them? Because sometimes we can use technical words which make sense to all our people that are in our system, but wouldn't make any difference to customers. So when you're looking at the transcript or you're listening to the words again, you're listening to what types of words you use, and therefore they make sense to people. And those are my 3 main things that I get people to do. When I'm teaching public speaking, that I also get people to do that there as well. To listen to the words, to listen to to watch the movements around, and then to listen to or to take the transcript of the types of words used. There are a whole load of extra things you can look at, but those are the 3 ones that would really make sense for you in this particular scenario.
John, let me ask, where
Sure.
does and ahs, fit in there?
You only use those when you want to make it sound like you're thinking about something, like I did just then. If you have too many ums and ahs, then you're unlikely to sound confident. And that would make you hard to follow. And also people will then tune out because they think you don't know what you're talking about. So yes, that is a very good point.
Or start laughing at you as I've done. Yes.
Yes. But, and I warn you, I'm rather naughty by this. You don't need an and an ah. Pause is much more powerful.
Mm.
We're using them and ahs usually because we want to attract people's attention because we're afraid they're going to lose eye contact with us because we haven't said anything for a few seconds. And so we go in the middle of a sentence just to get people just to feel that we keep saying things. But actually, it's much more powerful if you put in a pause, because then people go, what's happened? Where's he gone? Is he still there? Has he fallen off his chair? Has he muted himself by mistake? Has my computer crashed? What's gone wrong? It will attract their attention. Great question, Mike. Great question.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, saying great question is also a great way to think of the answer to something when you didn't know the answer and you want to think about it. But be careful. Don't become a politician answering every single question with a, oh, that was a great question, and then forgetting what the question was accidentally on purpose and going on to say something else. Great question is useful now and again, but it breaks the whole to and fro of a question if you use it too often, which of course is why politicians do, because then they take you off on another path and don't even have to ask the question at all. So beginning and end, working out the steps, the problems to get them from one to the other. That's all a webinar is. If it's in any more detail than that, it's a training session. So you just want to make them aware at the beginning that you see their pain, and at the end that you see their solution. And the solution doesn't have to be, we can work this for you. The solution can be, you've got such a difficult problem there, we can't deal with it in 20 minutes. And let's be honest, most business problems can't be fixed that easily in 20 minutes. So the solution, the call to action, doesn't have to be the final answer for them as a customer. It could be the webinar or the session or the training or whatever your interim product is that you sell them to get them down and get them actually walking that road from problem to solution rather than just talking about it. So that endpoint doesn't have to be the complete endpoint. It can just be the next stage in your process. But it's amazing how little in my brain I think I've talked about, and yet we've been online here for nearly an hour. So even those simple points that I had on my little PowerPoint slide, we've not even gone into the details of all of them. That was what ChatGPT gave me, and I wasn't. It covers all the things, but it's a little bit more than I would probably want to put in an hour. Because if you talk about these things in any reasonable detail and give examples, it's the examples that then take the time. And it's the examples and the case stories and the reasons behind things that make things work. Let's be honest. If you don't give any detail, then people won't believe you. And if you go into too much detail, people think they can do it on their own. So you need to give enough indication that there are things to do without showing them the whole process, because you'll bore them. Look, I'll give you this, my closing gambit. If I go to have my car fixed because I've got a problem, what does the mechanic do? Well, he doesn't explain everything he's going to do to fix the car. He emphasizes with me of my problem. He gives me an indication of what it is that needs to be replaced, but he doesn't tell me how he does it. He just says, you need this sorted, and then you'll be able to drive it beautifully. And that's what you want to do. So think a bit like a mechanic. You want to agree with a problem. You want to uncover exactly what the problem is. And then you want to say, we need to do this. And then your solution is there. And you need a name. That is a whole course in its own. I'm not going to do it now, but you need a name for your product that you fix so that you have a thing that is going to solve everything. So this is why you will see people on the internet talk about their ABC method or their 90-day method, or in my case, the 100 webinar challenge. Yeah, I know I talked to you about doing it once every month, but actually when I do the challenge, I do it as a weekly thing. Just because if you can think at the frequency of a week, then it's quite easy to do it as a monthly challenge. Again, it depends on how many people you're going to have and how frequently and whatever, but it's still, the whole concept is to create a webinar system that you repeat, you rinse and repeat, you repeat, you rinse and repeat, and you just keep doing it so that it improves over time.
52 weeks times 2 webinars, 104. So there's your 100 webinar challenge.
Yeah. If you're going to go for it full out, then you'll actually run 2 webinars a week. One webinar will be lead generation, and the other webinar will be the people that have signed up. So if you run it at a weekly frequency, then you could end up running 2 webinars a week. But of course, you're only going to run the second webinar for people to give you money. So don't go, 2 webinars, John, because the second webinar is the bonus, because that's when you get paid. Well, that's for another day. Mike, have you got some words of wisdom for us?
Words of wisdom. Let me see. Let's say that there are all the types of different webinars that you can have with all different types of topics that you can have. And depending on your skill level will depend on, and of course, your Zoom licensing level, more specifically in this case. John and I obviously suggest if you want to do anything like we've shown you today, this is a Zoom webinar plus license that we are using for this so that you can actually see this on YouTube and see all the different layouts that I've been switching between as John has been speaking to you today. So that's important. This is not getting, you're not going to get this fanciness in Zoom meetings without doing something else that will probably cost you a lot more money than potentially even upgrading from Zoom meetings to even Webinar Plus. So take that into consideration. And if you want to, follow us more, John and I will be showing off a little bit of the tricks here and there of what we do behind the scenes every so often. So do check us out when it comes to that. And you never know, one of these days you actually might be able to not only watch John, but maybe watch what I'm doing back here too. We'll see.
Well, tomorrow's webinar, we're actually going to have a look at the recurring system built into Webinars Plus, which is what is actually being used to run this show. So we will show a bit of that. So that was a good closing call to action, Mike. You're quite good at this, aren't you, really? I mean, you must be a really successful distributor because you got that call to action in at the end. That's beautiful.
Got to get the money.
You have indeed. So thank you very much.
I don't want to use that copyrighted sentence, but it's like something about showing and something about money. There might be a me in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, people have to make a commitment, and the best commitment they can make is to hand over some money. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in tomorrow, or if you're watching us YouTube, go and find the other video for the day after, where we show you how to run multi-sessions versions of Zoom, which is what we use and what I would suggest. And just for those people panicking about money, we're assuming you're going to only get maybe a few dozen people turning up, not the 500 that person suggested, which I think is unreasonable. Most of us are going to run a webinar, and if we get 20 or 30 people to our first webinar, we'd be happy. Well, you can buy the 100-seat webinar license from Zoom on a monthly basis. So your commitment can be just for that month. And then if you find it too much or you don't want to do it anymore or whatever, you can just cancel. And you only pay a month. So there's no, for the 100-seat license, there's no annual commitment, which means you can give it a go. You can have a play, see what happens, and then decide at the end of the month if it's worth it or not, which is why, of course, I would encourage you to do weekly ones so that your learning process is speeded up. But for this webinar, that is all we have for today. Thank you, Mike, for your support again today.
Of course. And
yeah. Over to you, sir.
All right. And we'll see you next week, and follow us tomorrow for a continuation of what we've done today. You get to see a little more behind the scenes. Take care, everybody.
Every week we open wide the virtual stage where ideas spark and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining. friend, enjoy the show. From big events to breakout rooms with flair, we've got the tools and we're ready to share. Guest experts drop in, bringing gold each time, with insights and tricks to help you climb. Can't make it live? We've got you still on YouTube and LinkedIn. We're giving that thrill, so tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we glow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show. And make it live, we've got you still. On YouTube and LinkedIn, we're giving that thrill. So tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Now take the spotlight, the stage is yours. Bring your message through virtual doors. Each week we gather, and now you know you're not alone, so let it flow. Thank you for joining us. Now go and shine. Share what you've learned. Your voice, your time. With Lord Zoom Live, your power will grow. It's time to build your own show.